The first rays of sunlight had not yet touched the sky when Dorothy Miller pulled the heavy metal trays from her ovens. Steam rose in thick clouds around her weathered hands as she set each tray on the cooling racks. The sweet smell of cinnamon rolls mixed with the rich scent of sourdough bread. She had been doing this same routine for 40 years, first alongside her husband Robert, and now alone for the past 3 years since his passing. Her bakery sat on the edge of Greenhillo, a small human settlement on a frontier world where different species tried to live together in peace. The building was simple, just 4 walls and a roof, but Dorothy kept it spotless. Through the front windows, she could see the main street that led into town. Behind her shop, a thick forest stretched for miles. Dorothy wiped flour from her cheek and began preparing the display case. She arranged the pastries with care, making sure each one looked perfect. This bakery was all she had left of Robert. He had built the ovens himself, choosing every brick with love. Some days, when the morning was especially quiet, she could almost hear his voice humming old songs while he kneaded dough. The town was slowly waking up. Dorothy saw Guard Captain Reed making his morning rounds, nodding to the few early risers on the street. A family of Tellarian merchants opened their shop across the way. Everything seemed normal, peaceful even. What Dorothy did not know was that someone had been watching her bakery for the past 2 weeks. Far beyond the edge of town, hidden among the tall trees, a massive shape sat perfectly still. Scales had traveled across 3 star systems before finding this place. He was old, even by dragon standards. His body stretched nearly 40 feet from nose to tail, covered in deep green scales that had faded to gray around his scarred snout. His wings, torn and patched from countless battles he never wanted to fight, folded tight against his sides. He had stumbled upon Greenhillo by accident, flying low to avoid detection by other dragons who might recognize him. Then the smell had hit him like a physical force. Warm, sweet, comforting. He had never experienced anything like it. Dragons fed on mineral deposits and volcanic heat. They did not need food the way other species did. But this smell, this incredible mixture of scents coming from the small building at the edge of town, called to something deep inside him. For 2 weeks, Scales had positioned himself just inside the tree line every morning before dawn. He would close his eyes and simply breathe. Each type of bread carried its own unique smell. The sweet ones reminded him of flowers he had seen on peaceful worlds. The plain ones smelled like earth and grain, honest and simple. The ones with herbs made him think of mountain meadows he had flown over centuries ago. He never came closer, he never made a sound. Other beings in town had spotted him, of course. A dragon was impossible to miss. But Scales never threatened anyone. He just sat, breathed deeply, and felt something close to peace for the first time in decades. Dorothy hummed softly as she prepared her second batch of the morning. The sun was finally rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She loved this time of day. The world felt fresh, full of possibility. She mixed ingredients for her special honey wheat bread, Robert's favorite recipe. A shadow fell across her window. Dorothy looked up from her mixing bowl and froze. Just for a moment, she saw something massive move between her bakery and the tree line, something with scales that caught the early morning light. Her heart hammered in her chest. She set down her bowl with shaking hands and moved to the window. The shape was gone, but the trees at the forest edge swayed slightly as if something very large had just passed through them. Dorothy pressed her hand against the glass, peering into the shadows. Had she imagined it? She had been working alone for so long. Maybe the loneliness was finally getting to her. She returned to her baking, but her mind kept wandering back to that shadow. Throughout the morning, customers came and went. The Tellarian family bought 3 loaves for their breakfast. A young Corthan engineer grabbed pastries for his crew. A human mother purchased rolls for her children's lunch. Everyone complimented Dorothy's baking as always, but she barely heard them. When the lunch rush ended and the shop grew quiet again, Dorothy found herself drawn back to the window. She stared at the tree line for a long time. The afternoon sun made the leaves glow golden and green. Nothing moved in the shadows. She sighed and turned away, telling herself she was being foolish. But the next morning, Dorothy arrived even earlier than usual. She lit her ovens and began her work, but she kept glancing at the window. Dawn broke. slowly pushing back the darkness. And there, just visible between the trees, she saw it clearly this time. A dragon, enormous and ancient, sitting with its eyes closed and its great head tilted slightly upward. Its chest expanded slowly as it breathed in through its nostrils. The creature looked almost peaceful, despite its fearsome size and the scars that marked its body. Dorothy stood completely still, watching the dragon watch her bakery. Or rather, she realized the dragon was not watching at all. Its eyes remained closed. It was smelling her bread. The dragon released its breath in a long, slow exhale. Then it opened its eyes. For just a moment across the distance between them, Dorothy met the creature's gaze. She expected to see hunger or threat. Instead, she saw something that shocked her to her core. Loneliness, pure and deep and aching. The dragon looked away first, then stood and disappeared into the forest with surprising grace for something so large. Dorothy remained at her window long after it vanished, one hand pressed against her heart. She knew that look. She had seen it in her own mirror every day for 3 years. 5 days passed, and Dorothy found herself thinking about the dragon constantly. She arrived earlier each morning, hoping to catch another glimpse. The creature appeared like clockwork, always positioning itself in the same spot among the trees. It never came closer to town. It never made threatening moves. It simply sat and breathed in the scents from her bakery. Dorothy asked around town carefully, not wanting to cause panic. She learned that people had seen the dragon for weeks now. Some families had stopped coming to her bakery out of fear. Guard Captain Reed had filed reports with the colonial administration, but since the dragon had not actually done anything wrong, they could not justify driving it away. "Dragons are dangerous, Dorothy," Reed told her one morning when he stopped by for coffee. He was a practical man in his 50s, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much violence in his career. "This one might seem peaceful now, but its nature will show eventually. They are warriors, destroyers. Every history book says so." Dorothy handed him his coffee and 2 apple turnovers. "Every history book was written by someone who survived a war," she said quietly. "Maybe this dragon is tired of fighting." Reed shook his head but did not argue. Further, he left coins on her counter and headed back to his patrol. That afternoon, Dorothy made a decision. She prepared an extra batch of her simple wheat bread, the kind that smelled the strongest and carried the furthest. She wrapped 3 large loaves in clean cloth and placed them in a basket. Then, before she could change her mind, she locked her shop door and walked toward the forest. The main street was busy with afternoon activity. People stopped and stared as Dorothy Miller, 72 years old and barely 5 feet tall, marched determinedly toward the tree line with her basket. A few called out warnings. Others simply watched in stunned silence. Dorothy's heart pounded harder with each step. She was afraid, she would not pretend otherwise. But she was also curious, and more than that, she was lonely. She recognized the look she had seen in the dragon's eyes because she lived with that same feeling every single day. She reached the edge of the forest and paused. The trees were old and thick here, their branches creating shadows even in the afternoon sun. "Hello," she called out, her voice smaller than she intended. "I know you are here somewhere. I have seen you watching." Silence, nothing moved except leaves rustling in the breeze. Dorothy took a breath and stepped between the trees. The forest floor was soft with fallen needles and moss. She walked slowly, scanning the shadows. "I brought you something," she continued, raising her voice slightly. "I thought you might want to try the bread instead of just smelling it." A sound like boulders grinding together came from her left. Dorothy turned, and there he was. The dragon had been so still that she had walked right past him. He blended perfectly with the forest shadows, his green-gray scales matching the moss-covered rocks and tree bark. Now that he moved, Dorothy could see just how truly massive he was. His head alone was the size of her entire bakery oven. His teeth, visible as he opened his mouth slightly, were each as long as her forearm. Dorothy's hands trembled, the basket shook, but she did not run. "My name is Dorothy," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I own the bakery you have been visiting each morning." The dragon stared at her with eyes like molten gold. He did not speak. Dorothy wondered if he even could speak. Some species communicated in ways humans could not understand. I wanted to thank you. Dorothy continued. Business has been slow lately. People avoid my shop because they are afraid of you, but you have given me something to look forward to each morning. Knowing someone appreciates my baking, even from a distance, it means something to me. The dragon's massive head tilted slightly, a gesture that seemed almost curious. Dorothy set her basket on a flat rock between them. She pulled back the cloth, revealing the fresh bread. Steam still rose from the loaves. The smell filled the space under the trees. I do not know if dragons can eat bread, she admitted, but I thought you might want to try. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the dragon slowly, carefully lowered his enormous head toward the basket. His nostrils flared as he breathed in the scent at close range. His eyes closed. A sound came from deep in his chest, something between a rumble and a sigh. You have never tasted it, have you? Dorothy asked softly. Only smelled it. The dragon opened his eyes and pulled back. When he spoke, his voice was like thunder rolling across distant mountains, deep and resonant but somehow gentle. We do not eat as you do. We survive on stone and fire. Dorothy's eyebrows rose. But you can speak. When I choose to, the dragon replied. I have not chosen to for many years. What is your name? The dragon was quiet for so long that Dorothy thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, I was called Scales by the first human I ever spared. It was meant as an insult. I kept it as a reminder. Spared, Dorothy prompted gently. Scales settled onto the ground, his massive body curling slightly. His tail, thick as a tree trunk, wrapped around fallen logs. 300 years ago, I was ordered to burn a human settlement on a world called New Terra. The settlement had broken some treaty my kind cared about. I flew there with my wing group, ready to follow orders. Dorothy sat down on a rock, listening. But when I arrived, I saw children playing in the streets. I saw gardens and schools and a place where families lived. I smelled bread baking, though I did not understand what that meant at the time. I refused to attack. My wing group burned the settlement anyway, but I would not join them. For that crime, I was exiled. Crime? Dorothy's voice shook with anger. Refusing to murder innocents was a crime. To my people, disobedience is the only crime that matters. Scales looked at the bread again. I have wandered alone ever since. When I found your bakery, when I smelled those scents again, I remembered that day, the day I chose mercy over duty. Dorothy stood and picked up one of the loaves. She walked forward until she was close enough to touch the dragon's scarred snout. Then let me give you something new to remember, she said, holding out the bread. Try it. Scales stared at the bread in Dorothy's hands. His great head lowered until his snout was level with her outstretched arms. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, like standing near a forge. His breath washed over her in warm waves that smelled of sulfur and stone. I do not know if I can, he admitted quietly. My kind, we process minerals. Our bodies are not made for this. Try anyway, Dorothy urged. What is the worst that could happen? A sound like rocks tumbling down a mountain came from Scales. Dorothy realized after a moment that he was laughing. I could accidentally incinerate you and your offering with a single breath. Then breathe carefully, Dorothy said, not moving. Scales studied her face for a long moment. Then, with incredible delicacy, he opened his mouth slightly and used the very tip of his tongue to touch the bread. He pulled back immediately, his eyes widening. It is warm, he said, sounding amazed. Of course it is warm, it just came from the oven, Dorothy smiled. Try a real bite. Scales hesitated, then carefully took the entire loaf between his front teeth. Dorothy watched as he slowly chewed, his expression shifting through surprise, confusion, and finally something that looked almost like wonder. He swallowed, then sat back on his haunches. I do not have the words, he said finally. It is soft and hard at the same time. It tastes like sunshine, feels like earth and growth and care. He looked at Dorothy with new intensity. You make this every day. Every single day, Dorothy confirmed. My husband Robert and I ran this bakery together for decades. After he passed, I kept it going. The baking helps me remember him. The routine gives me purpose. This Robert, he was fortunate to have you. Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. I was the fortunate one. She wiped her face quickly. Would you like another loaf? Over the next hour, Scales tried each type of bread Dorothy had brought. The simple wheat bread remained his favorite, but he appreciated the subtle differences in each variety. Dorothy sat on her rock and told him about Robert, about the bakery, about the loneliness that had settled into her bones after his death. In return, Scales spoke of his exile. He told her about flying through empty space, avoiding other dragons, watching civilizations from a distance but never joining them. He had seen 1,000 worlds and felt welcome on none of them. Why did you stay here? Dorothy asked. You could have kept traveling. Because for the first time in 3 centuries, I felt something other than regret when I woke each morning, Scales replied. Your bakery, the smells, they reminded me that I made the right choice that day on New Terra, even if it cost me everything. The sun was setting by the time Dorothy stood to leave. Will you come back tomorrow morning? She asked. I have come every morning since I arrived. No, I mean closer. Come to the bakery itself. I open at 5. You can watch me bake if you want. Scales shook his massive head. The people fear me. I do not wish to cause you trouble. Let me worry about the people, Dorothy said firmly. Besides, I have an idea. You said dragons process heat, correct? We feed on volcanic warmth, on the energy from molten rock and flame. My ovens need to stay very hot for hours each day. It costs me a small fortune in fuel. But if you could provide heat, Dorothy smiled. What if we helped each other? You heat my ovens, I feed you bread. Partnership. Scales stared at her. You would trust me that close to your livelihood? Dragons can incinerate buildings with a careless breath. You refuse to burn children when ordered to by your entire species, Dorothy pointed out. I think you can manage not to burn my bakery by accident. She picked up her empty basket. 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, I will leave the back door open. She walked back through the forest without waiting for an answer. Behind her, she heard Scales say quietly, Thank you, Dorothy Miller. That night, Dorothy barely slept. She kept thinking about Scales, about his story, about the loneliness in his voice that matched her own. She thought about Robert and what he would say about her befriending a dragon. He would probably laugh and tell her she always did have a soft heart. She arrived at the bakery at 4:30 the next morning, half expecting to find the back alley empty. Instead, Scales waited there, his massive body curled as small as he could make it. He looked nervous. Good morning, Dorothy said cheerfully, unlocking the door. Come on then, we have work to do. It took some maneuvering. Scales was simply too large to fit through the door. But Dorothy opened all the windows and the back door wide, and Scales positioned himself so his head and neck could reach inside while his body remained in the alley. The arrangement was awkward but workable. Dorothy showed him her ovens, explaining how they worked. I need steady, even heat, not too hot or the bread burns, not too cool or it will not rise properly. I understand precision, Scales assured her. He opened his mouth slightly, and a stream of flame so controlled and focused that it looked almost like liquid fire poured into the oven chamber. The temperature rose exactly as needed, then held steady. Perfect, Dorothy breathed. She began preparing her dough with quick, practiced movements. Scales watched every step, asking questions about ingredients and techniques. His curiosity was genuine and infectious. 2 hours later, the first batch emerged golden and perfect. The smell filled the bakery and spilled out into the street beyond. Dorothy broke off a piece of still warm bread and handed it to Scales. To new partnerships, she said. To second chances, Scales replied. They did not notice guard Captain Reed standing in the street outside, watching through the window with his hand on his weapon. They did not see the crowd beginning to gather, drawn by the sight of Dorothy Miller baking bread with a dragon. They were too focused on their work, Two lonely souls who had found unexpected friendship in the simple act of making something warm and good together. But the town noticed, and not everyone was pleased. Word spread through Greenhillo faster than fire through dry grass. By mid-morning, nearly half the town had gathered in the street outside Dorothy's bakery. Some came out of curiosity. Others came to complain. A few came to see if the old woman had finally lost her mind. Dorothy ignored them all. She moved between her work counter and her ovens with practiced efficiency, mixing and kneading and shaping while Scales provided perfectly controlled heat. They had fallen into an easy rhythm, communicating with small gestures and brief words. When Dorothy needed more heat, she tapped twice on the oven door. When the temperature was right, she nodded. Once, Scales adjusted his flame output with remarkable precision. "You are a natural baker," Dorothy told him as she shaped rolls for the lunch crowd. "Robert would have loved working with you. He always said the hardest part of baking was getting the oven temperature just right." "This gives me purpose," Scales replied quietly. "I have not had purpose in a very long time." The bell above the front door chimed. Guard Captain Reed entered, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. Behind him came Mayor Chen, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who ran Greenhillo with firm practicality. "Dorothy," Reed said carefully, "we need to talk." Dorothy continued working, not looking up. "If you want to talk, you can buy some bread like everyone else. I have a business to run." Mayor Chen stepped forward. "Mrs. Miller, we understand you have formed some sort of arrangement with the dragon. While we appreciate your independent spirit, you must understand the concern this causes." "What concern?" Dorothy asked. "Scales has been nothing but helpful. My ovens have never worked better, and I am producing twice as much bread as usual." "Scales," Reed's eyebrows rose. "You named it." "He named himself, actually," Dorothy corrected. "And he is right here, so perhaps you could address him directly instead of talking about him like he is not present." Both officials looked uncomfortable. They glanced at Scales, whose massive head rested just inside the back window. His golden eyes watched them calmly. "Mr. Scales," Mayor Chen began, clearly uncertain how to address a dragon. "While you have not broken any laws, your presence creates anxiety in our community. Surely you can understand why people might fear a creature of your size and reputation." "I understand," Scales rumbled. "I do not wish to cause fear. I can leave if you order it." "No," Dorothy said sharply, finally looking up from her work. "You will do no such thing. Mayor Chen, Captain Reed, let me ask you something. Has Scales threatened anyone since arriving here?" "Well, no, but—" "Has he damaged any property, stolen anything, caused any problems whatsoever?" "The issue is not what he has done," Reed explained. "It is what he could do. Dragons are weapons, Dorothy, living weapons, history shows us." "History shows us that people can change," Dorothy interrupted. "History also shows us that judging someone based on what others of their kind have done is called prejudice. I thought we learned that lesson centuries ago." The mayor and the guard captain exchanged glances. Before either could respond, the front door opened again. This time, a young girl burst in, moving so fast she nearly tripped over her own feet. "Grandma Dorothy," the child shouted. Dorothy's stern expression melted into pure joy. "Lily, I thought you were not coming until next weekend." The girl, maybe 7 years old with dark hair in 2 braids, launched herself at Dorothy for a hug. "Mom finished her work early, so we came today instead." Then Lily noticed Scales and froze. Her eyes went as wide as saucers. "Is that a real dragon?" "This is my friend Scales," Dorothy introduced them. "Scales, this is my granddaughter Lily. She visits when her mother can spare time away from the mining operation." Scales lowered his head even further, bringing his eye level with the child. "Hello, Lily. It is an honor to meet Dorothy's family." Lily approached slowly, more curious than afraid. "Can you really breathe fire?" "I can," Scales confirmed. "Would you like to see? I promise to be careful." Dorothy nodded permission. Scales angled his head toward the oven and released a thin stream of flame that looked almost like a glowing ribbon. It curved through the air and entered the oven chamber perfectly, raising the temperature without so much as singeing the walls. "Wow," Lily clapped her hands. "That is amazing. Can you teach me?" "I do not think humans can breathe fire," Scales said, and that rumbling laugh echoed through the bakery again. "Lily, sweetheart, why do you not help me frost some cookies while the adults finish talking?" Dorothy suggested. But Lily was already walking around the counter toward the back window where Scales rested. "Your scales are pretty. They look like the rocks in Mom's collection. Can I touch them?" "Lily, no." Reed moved forward instinctively. "It is all right," Scales said. He shifted slightly so a patch of his neck scales was within the child's reach. "I do not mind." Lily reached out and placed her small hand on Scales' neck. "You are warm, like a blanket fresh from the dryer." She looked back at the adults with a huge smile. "He is nice, Grandma Dorothy. Can he stay?" The simplicity of the question hung in the air. Mayor Chen opened her mouth to respond, but Lily continued, not waiting for an answer. "We had a Corthan family move in last year. Remember, everyone was scared because Corthans look scary with all their armor plates. But Mr. Thorne turned out to be really nice, and his daughter is my best friend now. Maybe Scales is like that. Just because he looks scary does not mean he is scary." Out of the mouths of children, Dorothy thought. Reed and the mayor exchanged another long look. "Perhaps," the mayor said slowly, "we should approach this more carefully. Mrs. Miller, would you and Mr. Scales be willing to meet with the town council? Let people ask questions, voice concerns in a proper forum." "As long as the forum treats Scales with respect," Dorothy said firmly. "He is not on trial. He is my business partner and my friend." "Agreed," the mayor said after a pause. "Town hall tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. After they left, Lily stayed close to Scales, chattering away about school and her friends and her rock collection. Scales listened with what Dorothy could only describe as delight. The massive dragon who had been alone for centuries seemed utterly charmed by the fearless 7-year-old. Dorothy watched them together and felt something shift in her chest. This, she thought, was what Robert would have wanted. Not just keeping the bakery alive, but filling it with warmth and friendship and the sound of a child's laughter. The town hall meeting room filled quickly the next evening. Rows of chairs faced a raised platform where Mayor Chen sat with several council members. Dorothy arrived early with Lily holding her hand. Scales waited outside, too large for the building, but positioned so he could see and hear through the open windows. The crowd was divided. Dorothy recognized supportive faces, people who had watched her kindness over the years and trusted her judgment. But she also saw fear and anger. A group of miners stood together near the back, their arms crossed and their expressions hard. The Tellerian merchant family sat near the front, their faces carefully neutral. Mayor Chen called the meeting to order and outlined the situation. "We are here to discuss the presence of the dragon known as Scales and his arrangement with Mrs. Dorothy Miller. This is a community forum. Everyone will have a chance to speak." A miner named Davidson stood immediately. He was a big man with scars from years of working dangerous equipment. "I will speak plainly. Dragons are killers. They have burned entire colonies. My grandfather died in the Outer Rim conflicts fighting dragon raiders. Now we are supposed to pretend this one is different because it likes the smell of bread." Murmurs of agreement rippled through part of the crowd. Dorothy stood, her small frame somehow commanding despite her age. "Your grandfather fought in a war. Wars have soldiers on both sides. Should we judge you by what human soldiers have done in other conflicts? Should we assume you will commit the same violence?" "That is different," Davidson protested. "How?" Dorothy challenged. "Scales refused to follow orders that would have killed innocent people. He was punished for choosing mercy. If anything, he showed more honor than soldiers who follow brutal commands without question." A Corthan woman raised her hand. Her name was Shara, and she ran the town's repair shop. "I understand fear. When my family came here, people avoided us because they thought Corthans were violent. It took time, but we proved ourselves through our actions. Has Scales not done the same?" He has been here less than a month, someone called out. And in that month has he harmed anyone, Shara countered. Has he stolen, has he threatened, or has he simply existed while helping an elderly woman run her business? Guard Captain Reed stood, the room quieted, waiting for his opinion. I have monitored the situation closely. I admit I was suspicious at first. Dragons have dangerous capabilities, but I have also watched Scales interact with the community. Yesterday, I saw him carefully move aside when children were playing in the alley behind the bakery, ensuring he did not accidentally harm them. He could have told them to leave. Instead, he accommodated them. He is manipulating us, Davidson insisted, playing friendly until we let our guard down. Lily stood up on her chair before Dorothy could stop her. That is silly. Scales is nice. He let me touch his scales and he made fire shapes for me. He tells good stories too. He told me about flying through nebulas and seeing worlds made of ice. Why would someone mean take time to be nice to kids? Sit down, child, one of the council members said, not unkindly. This is an adult discussion. But adults are not making sense, Lily said stubbornly. You are all scared of something that has not happened instead of seeing what is right in front of you. Scales makes Grandma Dorothy happy. She smiles again like she used to when Grandpa Robert was alive. Dorothy felt tears prick her eyes. She had not realized Lily noticed her sadness. Mayor Chen leaned forward. Mr. Scales, you have been silent. Would you like to address the community? Scales shifted outside the window. When he spoke, his deep voice carried clearly through the room. I understand your fear. I would fear me too if our positions were reversed. You look at me and see every story of dragon violence you have ever heard. You cannot separate the individual from the species. He paused, and Dorothy could hear something like sadness in his tone. I cannot change your minds with words. I can only offer you my truth. I am tired of being alone. I am tired of running. When I found Dorothy's bakery, I found something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. The hope that maybe somewhere someone might see me as more than a weapon or a threat. Pretty words, Davidson muttered. They are honest words, Scales replied. I will make you all a promise. If I ever cause harm to anyone in this town, if I ever use my abilities to threaten or frighten, I will leave immediately and never return. But I ask for the same courtesy you would give any newcomer. Judge me by my actions, not by my species. An older Tellarian man stood. His family had lived in Greenhillo for generations. I remember when humans first came to this world, many of us were afraid. Humans have a reputation across the galaxy for being unpredictable, sometimes violent. But we gave them a chance, and look what we have built together. A community where different species live and work side by side. Is that not worth extending to one more newcomer? The debate continued for another hour. Arguments flowed back and forth. Some people remained firmly against Scales' presence. Others gradually warmed to the idea. Dorothy listened to it all, her hand clasped tightly with Lily's. Finally, Mayor Chen called for a vote among the council members. It was not binding, she explained, since Scales had broken no laws, but it would represent the community's position. The vote was 4-3 in favor of allowing Scales to remain. It was not unanimous, it was not even a strong majority, but it was enough. Davidson and several others left the meeting immediately, clearly unhappy. But most people stayed, and a few even approached the windows to speak with Scales directly, asking cautious questions. Dorothy found the Corthan woman Shara waiting. By the door, thank you for speaking up, Dorothy said. Shara smiled, her armor plates shifting with the expression. My daughter is best friends with your granddaughter. They will be happy to keep playing together. Besides, Scales seems like a good soul. Those are rare enough that we should treasure them when we find them. Outside, as the crowd dispersed, Lily ran to Scales and hugged as much of his foreleg as her small arms could reach. You get to stay, she announced. Thanks to your grandmother's courage, Scales replied gently, and to friends like you who spoke up when others were silent. Dorothy joined them, looking up at the dragon who had changed her life in a matter of weeks. Come on, partner. We have an early morning tomorrow. Bread does not bake itself. No, Scales agreed, his golden eyes warm. But it bakes much better with friends. 3 months passed, and Greenhillo changed in small but significant ways. Dorothy's bakery became more than just a place to buy bread. It became a gathering spot, a symbol of something larger than itself. Scales arrived every morning at 5 o'clock without fail. He and Dorothy worked in comfortable silence most days, though sometimes she would tell stories about Robert or her life before Greenhillo, and Scales would share memories of worlds he had seen during his long exile. Their partnership grew stronger with each passing day. The bakery's output doubled, then tripled. With Scales providing perfect heat control, Dorothy could bake more efficiently than ever before. She hired 2 assistants from struggling families in town, both of whom quickly learned to work alongside the dragon without fear. The younger assistant, a Corthan teenager named Stone, became especially fond of Scales, often bringing him interesting minerals to examine. Children started gathering in the alley behind the bakery on weekend mornings. Scales would tell them stories of distant stars and strange worlds while Dorothy prepared treats for them. Lily organized the group, making sure everyone got a turn to ask questions. The dragon seemed to glow under all the positive attention. Even Davidson and some of the other skeptics began to soften, though they would never admit it aloud. When a mining accident trapped 3 workers underground, Scales used his ability to sense heat signatures to locate them quickly. He then used controlled fire to cut through collapsed rock, creating an opening for the rescue team. Davidson, whose nephew was one of the trapped miners, nodded stiffly at Scales afterward. It was not quite gratitude, but it was a start. One morning in early spring, Dorothy arrived at the bakery to find Scales in the alley looking troubled. His scales seemed duller than usual, and his posture was tense. "What is wrong?" Dorothy asked immediately. "There are dragons approaching," Scales said quietly. "3 of them, they will arrive within the hour. They are looking for me." Dorothy's blood ran cold. "What will they do?" "They will demand I return with them to face judgment for my past defection. If I refuse, they may use force." Scales looked at the bakery at the town beyond. "I should leave now before they arrive. I will not let you or this place be harmed because of me." "Absolutely not," Dorothy said firmly. "You are not running anymore. We will face this together." "Dorothy, you do not understand. These are not reasonable dragons. They see mercy as weakness and compassion as betrayal. They will not listen to a human." "Then they will learn to listen." Dorothy pulled out her communication device and called Mayor Chen, then Guard Captain Reed. Within minutes, word spread through town. By the time 3 massive shapes appeared in the sky above Greenhillo, a crowd had gathered in the town square. The arriving dragons were impressive and terrifying. They circled once, then landed in the open space beyond the buildings. Their scales were pristine, unmarked by the scars that covered Scales. They moved with military precision. The largest dragon, whose scales were deep red like cooling lava, stepped forward. His voice boomed across the square. "I am Commander Forge. We seek the exile known as Scales. His presence has been reported in this region." Scales moved to meet them, positioning himself between the newcomers and the town. "I am here, Commander. State your business." "You are summoned to return and face the Council of Elders. Your crimes against dragon law require resolution." "What crimes?" Dorothy called out, stepping forward despite Scales trying to block her with his tail. "The crime of refusing to murder children, the crime of choosing peace over violence." Forge's eyes fixed on Dorothy. "A human speaks in matters of dragon law. How curious." His tone made clear it was anything but curious. It was insulting. "This human speaks because Scales is part of our community," Mayor Chen added, moving to stand beside Dorothy. "He has contributed to our society and harmed no one. Why should he return with you?" "He defied direct orders during a conflict. He showed weakness when strength was required. He showed exactly what was required," Reed interrupted, surprising everyone by stepping forward. The old soldier's voice was hard. "I have fought in wars. I have followed orders I regretted. The hardest thing a soldier can do is refuse an unjust command. That does not make him weak, that makes him strong. One of the other dragons, younger with green scales, shifted uncomfortably. Commander, these humans make an interesting point, perhaps. Silence, Forge commanded. We do not take lessons in honor from lesser species. Lesser, Shara the Corthan stepped forward. We have built something here in Greenhillo, multiple species working together, living together, creating together. What have you built with your rigid rules and your violence? The crowd behind her murmured agreement. More people stepped forward. Tellarians, humans, Corthans, even a few of the more reclusive species that lived on the town's edges. They formed a wall between Scales and the dragon delegation. Forge looked genuinely shocked. You would defend him, a dragon who abandoned his duty. We defend him because he is one of us, Dorothy said simply. Because he has proven through his actions that he deserves to be defended. You speak of duty and honor, but what honor is there in punishing someone for refusing to commit murder? The youngest dragon, the one who had spoken before, moved closer. What is that smell? He asked suddenly. Bread, Scales answered. Dorothy makes it fresh every morning. The young dragon's nostrils flared. I have never smelled anything like that. Would you like to try some? Dorothy asked. I have extra. Forge snorted in disgust. We do not eat the food of humans. I did not either until Dorothy offered, Scales said. It will not nourish your body, but it might nourish your understanding. That is what I have learned here, that there are different kinds of strength, different kinds of purpose. Dorothy hurried to her bakery and returned with a basket of fresh rolls. The young dragon approached cautiously, took one, and carefully tasted it. His expression shifted through surprise, confusion, and then something like wonder. This is remarkable, he said quietly. Even the third dragon, who had remained silent, leaned forward to sniff the basket. Forge watched his companions with something like disgust and disappointment. We came to retrieve a fugitive, not to sample local delicacies. Then you came for the wrong reasons, Reed said. Scales has found a home here. He has found purpose and community. If you try to take him by force, you will have to go through all of us. The crowd pressed closer, not threatening but unmistakably united. Dragons faced humans, Corthans, Tellarians, and more, all standing together. Forge stared at the crowd for a long moment. Then he looked at Scales. You would choose these people over your own kind. They are my kind now, Scales replied. They see me as an individual, not just as a weapon or a disappointment. Here, I have value beyond my ability to destroy. The young dragon spoke again, his voice hesitant but growing stronger. Commander, I believe we should report this situation to the elders, not as a fugitive to be retrieved, but as something new to be considered. If humans and other species can accept a dragon as one of their own, perhaps we have been wrong about them. Perhaps we have been wrong about many things. Forge looked between his team and the assembled crowd. For a moment, Dorothy thought he might attack, but then his shoulders lowered slightly. The elders will hear of this, he said, but I will recommend they consider context, not just protocol. It was not forgiveness, it was not acceptance, but it was not violence either. The three dragons departed, their massive wings carrying them back into the sky. The crowd remained in the square until they disappeared from view. Lily ran to Scales and hugged his leg. You stayed. I did, Scales agreed, his voice thick with emotion. Thanks to all of you. Dorothy patted his scarred snout. Come on, partner, we have a business to run, and I think we might have more customers than usual today. Good news travels fast. That evening, after the bakery closed and the town settled into quiet, Dorothy and Scales sat together in the alley behind the shop. The stars were bright overhead. Thank you, Scales said softly, for giving me a reason to stop running, for showing me that home is not a place but the people who choose to stand beside you. Dorothy reached up and placed her weathered hand on his scales. Robert used to say that. Bread is magic because it turns simple ingredients into something that brings people together. I think friendship is the same kind of magic. Simple ingredients, flour and water and warmth, becoming something that sustains us. Your Robert was a wise man. He was, Dorothy agreed, and I think he would have liked you very much. They sat together in comfortable silence, an old woman and an ancient dragon, watching the stars and smelling the lingering scent of fresh bread that had brought them together. In Greenhillo, where different species learned to live as neighbors and friends, two lonely souls had found exactly what they needed. Not just companionship, but proof that even the most unlikely friendships can change the world, one loaf of bread at a time.